Okay, well, welcome back to episode number 4. Is that right, Nick? Number 4 of the Just Spence podcast. We finally have a guest back that I'm super stoked about. But before then, we'll just kind of recap, I guess, what's going on in my world. So the podcast that we're producing in Nashville, we shot a full day on Sunday, which is really, really cool. Logan and Ben are absolute riots. They're completely out of control. It's so funny when I agreed to produce this podcast. It's not like I had a ton of experience doing it, but I'm really good at just saying yes to things and trying to build the plane on the way down. So I'm like actively trying to learn cameras and setups and lighting, and that's why this podcast has been great for me too. But and now trying to understand editing and things of that nature, because I do think that media in a lot of ways is controlling the market right now, and so we just wanted to get good at it. So we're doing this, and so like Logan and Ben will say something on this podcast that's so off the wall. I mean, probably something that I don't even agree with. And then I've got the whole room looking at me going like, is it okay to say? And all I know to do, quite frankly, is just to let these guys be themselves and then see if it hits, and then we'll reel them in whenever we need to. But that's been going on there, but it's going so well. I don't want to give up the guests, but we've met some of the most incredible people. Screw it. I think if you're watching my podcast, you get an inside look. So we had Sasha Alex Sloan on, which is incredible. One of the biggest songwriters probably, in the last 10 years. I mean, she's incredible. If you like Lainey, she's written all of Lainey's stuff. What else? Who else? And then we had Maggie Winters on, which is a comic that did 3 nights at Zany's in Nashville, and then she popped over and did Logan and Ben's podcast. Nobody asked for this, so that's been fun. Just being adjacent to some really cool people and seeing them in that light and that perspective has been awesome. And I hope and pray that I get to come on my podcast and talk good about folks, or bad if they sucked. But no, we had 2 unbelievable women come on, and they were incredible. Hearing their stories was just incredible. What else is going on? My little daughter got chigger bites, and so we're dealing with that. So she has chiggers all over. And so I'm fortunate enough, my parents are pharmacists, so we get good treatment when it comes to stuff like that. And so I'm super thankful. There's something else cool that's going on in my life right now. I just can't remember. Me and my wife we're trying to figure out whether we want to move or stay where we're at. So that's been a doozy inside marriage. What else? My truck needs new brakes, so if anybody's got a good deal on some brake pads, you need to holler at me. What else happened this week? I don't know. But anyways, nothing crazy. The restaurants are going well. I'm enjoying that still. We're obviously in our busy season when it comes to pizza with football and weddings, and colder weather coming back in, and so that's been really fun. But other than that, y'all, I mean, that's about it. We're just working and running around trying to figure this whole life thing out like we all are. But anyways, enough about me. I'm super stoked about today. I didn't think that this interview would come this soon, but organically trying to get some of these artists and music people to come to this podcast, it's been extremely tough on their schedules because they have to come 45 minutes, and I'm really, I feel like they will. However, it's been tough to line up with their schedules, and I knew that the last 2 podcasts were all business related, so it just made sense that we got someone on here that knew business really, really well, and has been a mentor of mine for a long time. And I'm extremely stoked about it. I think you will be too. So we're just going to keep the business thing going. Jackie obviously was our first guest, and we're still going to get, entertainers and people in the music space. But this just made sense to me, and I felt confident in it. I felt good about it. It's going to get, today's going to be good. So without further ado, I'll introduce this individual. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's been in business for over 35 years. He's the CEO of Sheldon's Express Pharmacy, which is spread across 3 states and 9 locations. He was now you may have to help me with this. Well, I don't want to say that next. He was the founder of Bearcats baseball program here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He was the founder of Bowling Green Christian Academy. He was the founder of lowcostbatteries.com. In 2011, he was the Small Business Person of the Year in Bowling Green, Kentucky. In 2019, he was Cardinal Health Ken Rooster Community Leadership Award. He won the Ken Rooster Community Leadership Award, where $10,000 was donated to the UK College of Pharmacy. In 2019 to 2023, he was selected to be in the Kentucky House of Representatives, District 17. He's the president of Sheldon Family LLC, which is his real estate portfolio, quite frankly. He's been an investor and operator in Rockbox Fitness, Donato's Pizza, Batteries Plus Bulbs. You kind of probably know where this is going at this point. But he has coached many of my teams, but specifically he took the Diamondbacks to Pee Wee Champs in 99 and 2000. He has shown me what it means to lead with integrity. He has shown me what it means to not be distracted and keep a small circle. He has shown me how to raise 5 kids and be an entrepreneur simultaneously. And most importantly, he has shown me every day the definition of hard work and why it is so important to keep my faith in the center of everything I do. And he also shares his office space with me. You probably know him as Steve Sheldon. I get to call him my dad. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. After that, I'm absolutely sure that about half of that is made up. Maybe, did you get off Chat GPT or something?
No, I did not. I clicked Google search, and yeah, I feel like you're one of those guys that doesn't necessarily. I think we all have this pride element, and we all want our flowers at some point in our lives. But I think too, being an entrepreneur humbles us every single day of our lives. And maybe you don't hear your accolades, spat out like that. And I'm sure there's so many things that I missed and some things that maybe I said wrong. I don't know, but this is what I know, having obviously grown up and you being my dad. So I feel like I felt really comfortable with that list and saying it out loud, because I do know that you are a big part of all those things, and some things are undeniable and the awards are there. But yeah, I think it's just healthy for people just to hear some of the things. And that's probably a fraction of what you've done and what you've been a part of. And I think it's important too, just for the podcast and the people on the podcast, to know what you've been a part of, so they know where your acumen is coming from. So for me, it's like, yes, am I talking my dad up? You bet. Will he do it himself? No, that's why this is fun to do. But also when he answers questions today, I mean, it's important to understand the guy's been doing this for 35 years across so many genres of business. And yeah, I think you know what you're talking about in a lot of ways. But I don't want to get into business yet. And honestly, guys, this could go on forever. So we may be splitting this up into 2 parts. I don't know. I'm one of those guys to where if the podcast sucks, we're going to wrap it. But if it's going well, we're going to keep going too. So yeah, I'm going to be cognizant of that today. But I'm pumped. So you were born.
Yes, I was born in Mildenhall, England, just outside of London on a military base. Many, many years ago, 1960, and my father was in the Air Force, and my father had been on tour over in Vietnam several times, and then he was stationed, after I got to be about 3 or 4 years old, he was stationed to South Carolina, Sumter, South Carolina, which is where I did majority of my growing up, in Sumter, South Carolina, on the military base there, Shaw Air Force Base.
So you grew up on a military base. I mean, what does the day in the life on a military base look like?
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, even I probably haven't even asked this question to you, but as a wee little tot, so how long were you on the military base, I guess?
We were there, I was born on one, and then that was about 3 years in England, and then probably another decade in Sumter, South Carolina.
That's right. Okay.
I was living at Shaw Air Force Base, just off the base. After my father got a certain rank, I think we were able to move off the base a little bit, and we had a little bitty home there close. But we lived on the base because that's where our groceries are. That was where our entertainment, it was a nickel to bowl. It was a dime to swim. I didn't get to hang with the officers' kids. My dad was an enlisted man, so I had to be in the NCO, and for military people to understand what that means. But I was in the NCO crowd, not in the officers' crowd. But anyway, a day in the life on a military base, I think you're taught an unbelievable amount of discipline, and I watched my dad have to present that same discipline to his superiors, and he expected the same out of us. So yeah, really a big part of who I am was developed in that time period.
Do you think this is just me thinking out loud, and we're probably getting ahead of ourselves, but do you think that, you even said this before I invited you on the podcast, you said you like to keep somewhat private. Do you think some of that seclusion comes from that military base feeling so kind of territorial at times and having a small crew? Do you think that part of your upbringing kind of shaped the way you kind of do business?
I think that, certainly it had an effect on me because my character was developing in those formidable years. I'm 4 or 5 years old on up to 12, 13. And every time you went on the military base, you had to have a military ID. I had a military ID. You had a little ticket booth and guys carrying guns and checking out everything in your car every time we went on and off base. So yeah, there was this sense of we're kind of community there, but we're into ourself, the veterans and all the soldiers. And so our entertainment every year was watching the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels come flying over the flight lines, and the families all sitting with picnic blankets watching that. So right. Everything was centered around that.
And you were the oldest.
I was actually, my sister was older, and then I was second, and then I have the younger brother.
So what was the family dynamic? I mean, what did you feel like your role was as a brother, and to Aunt Debbie and Uncle Ricky, like growing up on a military base, and then obviously, without giving it away, your dad passes away when you're 17. But I guess pre your dad passing away, and then post, what did you feel like your role was inside your family from an early age?
I think from an early age, I adopted that whole, back in those days, we called it the man of the house syndrome, I guess. But I was the oldest boy, and my younger brother was a couple of years younger than I was, and we were, we stayed together really close through those years, but we also were just 2 years apart, so we had a lot of differences, but I felt like my role was take care of the family, protector, provider, and I think that's a lot of where you see that now, or you saw in your life. That whole protector, provider thing was just so important to me. Sometimes to a detriment, probably to you guys.
Well, was it? I guess when your dad passed, I'm sure that role was even elevated even more. Is that kind of what you're speaking towards? You think that? I guess you were 17, so that would have made what, Aunt Debbie?
Yeah, Debbie actually got married a year before my dad died. And she was only 16 years old, my sister was, when she got married. And my dad was able to see Jenny, my niece, who, by the way, is in poor health now, but getting better. Good Lord's healing her, so that's great. But my sister got married when she was 16, so she was out of the house. So it immediately fell on me, and that was okay. Dad wasn't around. Mom was dealing with what mothers do when your husband's 40 years old and dies, and she's got 3 kids, and she's living in South Carolina away from any extended family. And I had to. In my mind, I felt like it was time, for me. So we had moved to 2 or 3 years prior to him dying in hopes that he could spend some time with his mom and dad and his family before he passed.
And I think it's important to talk about. I mean, I'm sure that there were moments in your life from 1 to 17 that there were good moments with your dad. But I think it's important to understand Steve Sheldon as a whole, and quite frankly, me as your son, to understand you maybe a little better. So talk about the fact that, he did struggle with alcohol. It was a big component for you being a young kid / trying to be the man of the house, because you saw how sometimes your dad was treated. And I don't want to paint him in this negative light, right? Because that's your dad.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important to understand you and what encompasses you. And this podcast is about you. What effects on your dad being an alcoholic, and watching some of the things that you had to go through, stuff that you're probably still having to cope with today. Yeah, I mean, I guess talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
on having an alcoholic father on a military. You just,
Yeah,
I guess all
yeah,
of it.
yeah. No, the military scene in those days. I don't want to talk about it today. I've been far removed from it for a while, but in those days, the military scene was just a lot of alcohol, a lot of clubs, a lot of camaraderie that centered around the soldiers, and the wives were more support mechanisms, and at least in our case, in our family, uh, I my my father didn't give my mother the respect I think she deserved, and he he just fell into just a lot of trouble with alcohol. And back in those days, you didn't have the opioid crisis and all that stuff. But alcohol on a military base is just like having Gatorade. I mean, it's just that's what they did. And so yeah, he came home. He was an abusive husband. Many times they locked us in. We had a little bitty room that me and my brother had single beds in. They would lock us in there, and my sister in her room, and my father, and we could hear the screaming. And so yeah, there's a lot of discomfort in taking me back there, but it is certainly caused me to feel the certain way I do now about addiction, about alcohol, about. But that doesn't mean I didn't experiment myself, because that's what I think people do what they see. They don't do what they necessarily their dad tells them to do. They look at their dad and they, in my case, I saw what he did. I saw the way he lived, and quite frankly, while he was alive and we were on military base, he's wearing a soldier uniform. He's going 8, 9 months overseas, 3 or 4 different tours, and he's flying a helicopter, and he was my hero. He was my hero, even though,
Mm.
But as I got older, and I started seeing, and it more revealed as alcoholism got worse. I it began to be a lot of tension, obviously. I was around 12 or 13 when it probably reached its peak, and I just totally unplugged from my father, and my mother. We encouraged her to try to find some distance, and we all worked through it together as a family. And when my father died, we were all by his side. But yeah, I think it definitely had a huge impact on how I look at children, raising kids, my career, my family. All of that was certainly affected by what I had to live through at those ages, because there were many a night we would drive down an old gravel road, because my mother would get a call from the NCO club, the bar there on the base, letting her know that my dad had just left and was coming home. And she knew what that meant. And so we would get in a little green Volkswagen and drive out on a gravel road, and be school night the whole bit, and we would just sleep on the gravel road in the Volkswagen, so my dad could come home to a bed and go to sleep and not be abusive, and so that happened on a number of occasions, and just a way of life. I didn't know that there was any different, because I had friends on the military base and other children that were dealing with their fathers in the same way. So I didn't know there was any different. But that's kind of a little. It sounds a little tragic, but it was all I knew. I don't know that I felt like I was at a disadvantage at the time. I felt like this was kind of. But I knew I didn't like what I was seeing, and not having a relationship with my father really hurt me. As I got older, and certainly as I began to raise my family, not having that relationship was, yeah, it had an effect on me for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I think too, number one, that I just a thought that came to my mind was, alcohol has become such a thing in society, right, wrong,
Right,
indifferent.
right.
And we were raised obviously that alcohol was like the worst thing that ever happened. And I'm not saying that it was the best or the worst thing you guys ever did as parents, but I think when it comes to folks that don't drink, I think one of the things in our society at this point that we've got to get better at is understanding and empathizing with people that aren't drinking, that are in this space to where they're choosing not to, and not responding or being weird or awkward or angst towards those people. I think we as a society have to be more accepting about those people, because you watched your mother be hit by your father under the influence, and who are we to sit across the room and look at that guy or that woman and say, shame on them for not drinking or not having a good time. I'm going, screw that. I'm going, and that's why I'm not a advocate for drinking, but I do feel like I've got this whole empathy for people that I don't care whether you do or not.
Right.
I've got a dad and I've got a mother that doesn't drink, and obviously we've had drinks together. We're not, this
Right.
isn't foreign to us, but at the same
Right.
time, you guys choose not to in a lot of settings. And I just think as a society, we don't know what the freak people have gone through. And I think shame on us, even in college and post college and as professionals, even, the peer pressure of you're not going to have a drink? Are you serious? Is bullshit. And I just think that you just don't know what people go through. And just hearing your story, it's like, oh my gosh, how many times have I tried to get someone to have a drink with me or do this? And you just don't know what people are going through.
Yeah, I
And
really I can relate to that in a lot of ways because now I'm 65. So I've been through a long career here in Bowling Green, and there were many times that really good friends of mine, I could feel the awkwardness in the room when I didn't drink, and of course and they always, I keep my stuff private. It's probably the first time it's ever come out of some of the reasons why I don't, but you know, I always felt like there were many times when I was like a mystery to them, and I wouldn't necessarily be invited to the balls or to the places where there was going to be a lot of alcohol. And I felt in some ways, like I wish I could have been invited and went and just been myself and not drank and not felt awkward. But
yeah, I think
you
people
know,
think for some reason that if you don't drink, or I think just growing up, quite frankly, for me in the 80s and 90s and this whole, in this Southern Baptist era about
right?
alcohol and the stigma around it was like, if you didn't drink, you felt like you were, holier than thou, or you were better than, when it was
Yeah,
really just not the
people have the
case.
wrong
Yeah,
impression.
it's such a
Yeah,
stink. It's such a terrible way of looking at it, but it was just probably the reality of what you
right.
guys were having to go through. And I'll be the first to admit I drink. However, I think I can even do a better job of being around folks that aren't, and maybe goodness gracious, probably better for me. Maybe if I run in that direction than the other sometimes. But
Well, certainly a glass of wine on an anniversary is not. I mean,
well, yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, we certainly partake in very limitedly, or
yeah,
I
yeah.
do.
Well,
But
I think
yeah,
this isn't really about alcohol. This is more
right,
about empathy than anything. And
right,
when there's people in
right,
your life that choose to not do something outside the scope of maybe what you call fun, you consider fun, there's just no reason for
right.
anyone to look down on that individual or think any less of it, because you have no idea what the heck they were going through. I'll give you another story. We were playing a golf tournament, and this is getting out there, but this is why I'm Spence, and this is just where my brain goes. But we were playing in a golf tournament. I think this was like 3 weeks ago. This is just about empathy, quite frankly, and understanding like you don't know the full story. We were playing a golf tournament. We're on the green, and it's a pretty prestigious golf tournament if you know it in Bowling Green. I think, yeah, this was Hogshead, I believe. No, it was member guest. So it was a member guest at our country club, which is pretty prestigious. And we're on the green, and I'll get to the point of the story is, I'm not going to name any names here, but one individual drove the green, which is a heck of a drive, right? I think it was probably like 380, 400, but drove the green, and we were on the green. And the ball comes by this guy's head that was paired with us to play, and he loses his absolute mind. Now, if you know me, I'm the most unconfrontational human being in the world. I don't necessarily enjoy conflict, and maybe it's because I saw a lot of it early on in my life. I don't know, but I don't really like it. I find nuanced ways to call out people with trying to be as sweet as I possibly can. It's worked decent for me, not great, but nonetheless, this individual loses his mind. This is a prestigious tournament, mind you, and I kind of know the guy that hit the drive is probably up there in the runnings to probably get out of his flight and win this thing. He takes the ball and he launches it back into the fairway, and he is yelling at this individual. He's going nuts. He's doing all this stuff, and there's probably 5 of us trying to calm him down, going, dude, you are losing your mind. What is going on? So then the individual comes up, they get into it, and then his partner gets in it with him, and they're going absolutely nuts. And I'm sitting here going, guys, this is just golf. What is going on? So we move on to the next hole, right? What's even funnier is the individual that caused the scene that I was playing with. He forgot his club head cover on the green, so he had to like tuck his tail between his legs and walk back to get his club head from
That's
that
great.
individual. And they're both, and they're kind of making ends, but the other guy just kind of long. It's still a big deal. So he gets to the tee box, and I'm sitting here going, man, that was just kind of crazy. But he looked at us and he said he had gotten hit in the head with a golf ball. A ball had hit him when he was 18, 19 years old, hospitalized.
Wow.
It's just the same. It's no different, man. I'm looking at
It was
this
a
guy as
trigger
an
then for him,
irate
yeah.
individual, but really he has a life
Yeah.
experience that no one, including me, all 6 of us, had no idea that this has happened to this guy. And I'm sitting here going, it was just another life lesson to me, and like judging a book by its cover and understanding where people are coming from. Like, you just don't freaking know, man. And so, I use that as a story just to piggyback off of just being empathetic towards folks and stuff like that. So, okay, so you're born on a military base. Your father dies when you're 17. You immediately kind of assume this role as probably, I don't know if it's not necessarily a father figure, but it's definitely man of the household. And so you do that, and Debbie's married, so she's out of the house. So it's you and Uncle Ricky and Nene, God love her soul, rest in peace. She just passed away. But your mom. Take me through. You're in high school in Owensboro, or are you in Fort Sumter? When did you come to Kentucky?
I came to Kentucky when I was 13.
So 13,
so that he could spend his last 2 or 3
That's
years
right, you
with his
said that.
family. So I was in Owensboro only long enough to go to high school.
And
I
you
got
went
there
to
high
Owensboro
school.
Senior.
Owensboro Senior High.
And
right.
sports. What sports did you play?
Baseball, and loved every minute of it. Tried basketball for a year or two and some other sports, but really baseball was kind of my thing.
So what brought y'all to Owensboro?
His family lived there.
That's right. You
Yeah,
told me that. Okay.
yeah. His whole, like,
So he was
my
from
dad's
Owensboro.
whole family and my mom's whole family all live in Owensboro.
So they met in Owensboro.
Yeah, they met in
Nene and Daryl
Owensboro.
met
They got
in
married.
Owensboro.
She was 15 and he was 16.
And he enlisted.
And he
then
enlisted in the
Milton
Air
Hall.
Force the minute
So they were
got
from
married.
Kentucky.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I didn't. I don't think I'd ever
yeah.
made that connection. Okay. So then you come back. You're at Owensboro Senior.
People are gonna think we never talked to each other.
Well, no, I mean, I don't.
Well, this
I
is
don't-
deep.
if
This
you
is
would-
deep stuff,
If
yeah.
I would ask, I mean, I feel like I'm obviously extremely close with my papa and
Yeah.
Memo on mom's side, but I guess I think where's
You
Papa
wouldn't have
from?
known.
Is he from E-Town? Where's Papa?
Hartford.
Hallsville. He's from
Hartford.
Hartford. Yeah.
He's from Beaver Dam.
Beaver Dam. Yeah, right around where Nene was from,
yeah.
which is so ironic, right? Because she
Mhm.
lived in Hallsville.
Owensboro, and then moved on up to Rental Station for
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's just, this is why I guess this is healthy. So that happens. Then you go so high school, and then you come to Western, right, for your undergrad.
Right.
You came here. I think the story that I feel like I know, you went to be a doctor, but you wanted to. No, hold on. How did you go to college? Your family couldn't
Right.
afford. I think this is
Right.
cool. Your family couldn't afford it, but the military, it was a war orphan scholarship. How'd that?
Yeah,
how's all that?
it's a really cool story. I actually got out of high school thinking that I was gonna enlist in the military. Oddly enough, you do what your dad did, right? So I thought either I would enlist in the military, or some of my uncles, my dad's or my mom's brothers, were mechanics, and I was interested in working on engines, things like that. So as I was approaching graduation in high school, I get a visit from a couple local servicemen in the Air Force. I guess it was their job to kind of do this for people who have passed away as a result of the war, which was my father. And so they show up not too long, probably a few weeks before graduation, at my house, and they were dressed in their blues and walked in and sat down in the living room and said, there's something we want to tell you that you may not be aware of. Since your father died as a result of the war, we have what we call in the Veterans Administration a War Orphan Scholarship. And what this, because I'm not thinking college, I'm not even dreaming college. I mean, nobody in my family had ever been to college, and my mom had 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. My dad had 2 or 3. I mean, nobody had ever been to college. So I wasn't really thinking, but they came in and said, we're going to give you a War Orphan Scholarship. Honestly, that didn't really impress me that much at the time. I look back, I know how much it changed my life. But basically, they said if you stay in the state of Kentucky, we will pay your tuition to go to any college, state-funded college that you get. And so again, I kind of was a little like, well, that would require me to go to school, college, and all my uncles and none of them went to college, and they were all into the trades, and so. But I was grateful. I was, I guess, old enough to be grateful and appreciative of what my dad had to do for me to have this honor.
Right.
So that eventually hit me, and probably the thing that tilted me to go to college. They gave me the War Orphan Scholarship, so I didn't have to pay for it. We didn't have the money for me to go. But the big thing was they were going to give me a check for $311 every single month as long as I was in college. And that was a load of money. I'd never, I mean, I immediately thought, huh? You're going to give me some money. So I'd like to say it was some great reason or some wonderful, more inspirational reason. But the truth was, I was graduating. We didn't have any money. We didn't have nowhere to go. I knew I had to enlist in the Army or whatever. And this option came up. And when they said they would give me $311 a month, I said, okay. So I found a place to rent in Bowling Green for $150 a month, and then I got a job in the library, and I went to school.
So they paid for obviously your schooling, but the job in the library is wild to me.
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
It was just we studied. I was in pre-med at the time. I started out in medicine. I thought, well, if I'm going to have to go, I'm going to give it a shot. I was a terrible student in high school for the most part. I made good grades, but I didn't really study the way I should have. But so I going for it all. Somewhere in there, I just said, okay, if I'm going to go, I'm going to make my father proud. I kind of transitioned into the whole dad's gone. He had to die for this. I got to honor his name by using it properly. So I went out to be a doctor, and my dad was a medic in the military. So there was this constant, there was a pull towards healthcare anyway. So yeah, I went down there to make sure that I honored his name and did it right. But
so healthcare, and then how'd you transition into pharmacy?
Yeah, I went to the pre-med route for about 3 years and applied to medical school, got on the waiting list, and then had a visit to Louisville Medical School with one of my best friends who became a physician, lives in Louisville. And we went into a gross lab there where they had the cadavers, and I'll never forget how I felt when they opened up those solid stainless steel coffins. And the people that were working on that cadaver prior to me looking at it had braided the lady's hair and had a bow in it and everything. I mean, it made me sick to my stomach to the point I left Louisville that day, that med school, saying I got to do something else. So I'll never forget it. So I come back and I went to my VA counselor, and she said, you can be a biology teacher or a pharmacist with the classes you have. And so I picked pharmacy.
Yeah, I think that's. I remember I kind of knew that story, or knew I was familiar with it. I've told people in the past, like, yeah, believe it or not, my dad was going to school to be a doctor. I think that was cool for me to say when I was like 12 or something. I don't know. But I think the story that we as brothers and sisters said, we said you didn't like the blood, but there was no blood in that cadaver.
No.
It's so funny. Yeah, just getting some clarity on this stuff. I think when I told people that
it was the humor that they found in the death that bothered me.
Yeah, because you had experienced death at such a different level.
Yeah.
So when does Ryan come along? Ryan's my oldest brother, half brother.
He came along. I was second year of pharmacy school.
Okay, so you get through undergrad. And how old are you at undergrad? Like when you're coming out of undergrad, going into pharmacy school?
I think I was 20, probably 20 coming out of undergrad, 21 maybe.
So I'd have to find out that you're going to have a kid when you're 22.
Right.
Wow.
And then we go up to Lexington where the pharmacy school is. We had to move, and so your oldest brother was born in the Good Samaritan Hospital, right behind the Wildcat Lodge in Lexington.
That's right. And so you had a child while you were still in pharmacy school, correct?
Yes.
So you were trying to be a dad and get through school. And then where were you working? Were you still in the library?
I actually, when I went to Lexington, I got a job at Good Samaritan Hospital,
So you're
which
at the
is where
hospital,
he was
working in the
born.
pharmacy?
Yeah, I was working in the pharmacy as an intern.
Interesting. So that would have been, so all things considered, how old were you when you started at Good Samaritan? 24, 25?
Yeah, yeah, right at probably around 23,
So you've been
probably.
in pharmacies, around pharmacies since then. At
Yeah. Oh
24,
yeah.
25, and
Yeah.
you haven't stopped. That's a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And so you have Ryan. How was that? How was transitioning? Because I know from my own personal experiences, I had my first child when I was 25. I think is no, 28, which still felt really young to me. And yeah, I just remember. I feel like we think a lot alike, and I feel like for me it was extremely tough to go. Okay, I'm going to have to not prioritize my business and my company as much because now I've got to be a dad. And it's almost amazing of what you've built up to this point in your career, having that and then 4 times over after Ryan. But for me, I think the hardest part when I felt young and I felt like I wasn't ready to give up this all gas, no brakes mentality when it came to my career. But then a child comes along and obviously a wife. And for me, I don't know. It just changed so much. I guess, how did you navigate? You didn't have social media, so you didn't really have anything to
No.
compare yourself to. This was just probably
Yeah.
your life, and what's
Yeah.
the best way that I can live this? So it probably wasn't as much pressure as maybe I felt at 28. But how was that trying to be a dad at the time? Obviously a husband, and get through school and provide, and still probably feeling like you needed to take care of your mom, still probably feeling like you needed to take care of your little brother maybe at times. I know Uncle Ricky's probably, if he's listening to this, he's rolling his eyes. Yeah, I didn't need his damn help. I can hear Uncle Ricky now. But I mean,
uh,
regardless of the way Uncle Ricky felt, I know that maybe you still felt that way as his big brother. Regardless,
oh yeah. We
your
always had each other's
perspective
back.
is
Yeah.
your reality, and I tell people that all the time. It's like, regardless of the way Uncle Ricky felt about it, or regardless of your
Right.
mom probably being hard headed, going, "I didn't need Steve's help." It doesn't matter. That's the way you felt. And
Right.
so now you're a dad. You're trying to take care of two because you don't have a dad, and a son and a husband at the time. Now what? How was all that? I guess
Yeah. It was
getting through school.
it was a lot to balance. I think that that probably set the table for the rest of my career, learning how to balance all of those things at a very young age,
Mm,
and knowing that people were depending on me, and feeling that pressure, while I was dependent on them as well. And so I kept my circle very small, as I still do today. And because I think I kept that circle small, it probably helped me balance all of the roles I felt like I needed to play. I'd study while I could, at work and late at night, early in the mornings, and tried to be a dad. You know, the minute I got in from school or
crazy.
got in from work, and then tried to just did all my best to, call my mom, let her know how I was doing, keep in touch with my brother who was, having his own stuff that he was doing in life, and I was proud of what he was doing, but staying connected with the family. And then over the years, that became harder and harder. But I think that's probably what set the table for why I think I reach out into so many areas,
Right.
because I think that's all I ever knew early on.
When did you meet mom?
I met her. I want to think I was 27, 26, 20, or maybe 28. Gosh, I shouldn't. We got married in '89. So
But you guys were at pharmacy school together?
no, no. Actually, I'm a few years
Pharmacist.
older than she is. So she came along as an intern,
That's right.
and I was working in a drugstore, and she came through as an intern for 4 weeks, and that was the first time I had met her. Probably didn't keep in touch, but a year later, a mutual friend, we crossed paths again,
So when you
and then we
first met
began to
mom, were
date.
you married?
Uh, I was going through a divorce when
So
I
you were
first
in the
met her.
middle
Yeah,
of it.
we were actually, I was already living at home with my mother, and That was my hero, my mom, and she was trying to help me deal with all the things that go with a
Right.
spoiled relationship, and one that I quite honestly caused myself. So, a lot of guilt, a lot of nobody wants to be divorced. It's a
Hmm.
horrible thing. But it was dealing with all that, and then certainly.
Well, if you wouldn't have got divorced, I probably wouldn't be here.
That's
So,
right.
I
That's
mean,
right. That's right. Yeah, you have to look at it as you move forward. There's things that you do wrong in life, and you hope you can rebound.
right.
I can honestly say that both she and I have rebounded well and did well, and have great families, and
Yeah, I love it. And
it's all
Ryan,
good stuff.
obviously, Ryan's been a big piece, obviously, in my upbringing and seeing, I think for us too, just having a sideline seat to divorce and maybe seeing pros and cons, obviously, but probably a lot more cons than pros as it pertains to my relationship with my oldest brother and having to travel and going back and forth and watching that obviously has shaped me, I think, as a
Mm-hmm.
husband. And as much as it probably sucked for you, I think us as brothers being able to see it, and I think Ryan up close and personal, I think if he was sitting here today, he would look at you and say, you know, rain or shine, I'm just not going to let that happen with Courtney because he
Yeah,
knows what the
that's
effects
right.
that it took.
He felt
Right.
it
So it's
personally.
like
Yeah.
just like anything else. I think a lot of us go through, stuff, and we're kind of the guinea pig for so many other people to experience something positive. I think you were obviously that through divorce, but. So mom comes along. What was that pharmacy? Was it Roscoe's, Osco's? Was that? Why am I
Uh,
thinking about that name? Was that a
well,
pharmacy,
well,
or is it what
I worked
pharmacy
at
was she the internship?
Village West
Village
Drugs,
West.
which
Okay,
is I
and
was
that
in
was in Owensboro.
partnership. It was in Owensboro, and I was in partnership with another guy in that.
Why was
And
mom in Owensboro?
because as part of her internship, the pharmacy school sends you to different pharmacies throughout the state.
Oh, she
And
was
I
only there for
suppose
four
she
weeks.
must have picked Owensboro because it was close to Bowling Green, and that was where she was from. So, but
Huh.
it's all dictated through
So she was
her
driving.
education.
She was commuting, or was she living in
I
Owensboro?
think she had an Aunt Joyce, that she lived with, or the Gaddises is her family as
No
well.
way.
She's got family that lives
I mean,
in,
I knew that, but I
yeah,
didn't know that she
and she was
stayed with them
living
for
with
those 4
them,
weeks.
and she was only there 4 weeks as an intern.
So
So
4 weeks as an intern, you guys meet.
we
You
just
guys
meet. I
get
know who she is
married.
at that point, and then, like I said, later on,
Get married. Start
yeah,
dating.
later on we just started dating. A year later, when I had dissolved my relationship with my partner there in Owensboro, and I had moved over to another guy, Nations Medicines, and began to work with him. And then together, he and that was when I decided to open my first drugstore on my own, and I had to pick a place. And the only place I'd ever lived really, other that I could remember, was Bowling Green. So I went to Western there. So I looked at Paducah, I looked at E Town, I looked at a lot of different places, but ultimately decided Bowling Green was where I'd go open up my first drugstore, or try my own, by myself, open up my first business, versus being in partnership, which was, the
Right.
older gentleman that I was with. I just felt like I didn't really get a fair shake there. So that run me on having partners the rest of my career. So if you look back at my career now, since then, I've never had partners, other than my children or so.
Yeah. Yeah. And another I think misconception maybe about you or just me being in the community is that he does do things by himself. And he never had partner. Steve won't ever, don't ask him to do anything with you because he doesn't. But little do they know, I guess, how, I'm not going to name his name, but whatever that
Right.
negotiation and that franchise, if you will, you felt like you were screwed over in a way, and that's probably dictated your thought pattern, right, wrong, or different. I'm not saying that
Right.
you're still not in the wrong on some scenarios,
Yeah.
but
Right.
it is kind of
Right.
the driver
Right.
as to why you've stayed probably by yourself. So did mom ever work in the pharmacy with you at Nations in Owensboro, or
Mm-mm.
okay, so you guys were
No,
just
that
dating
was.
at the time, then you come to Bowling Green and that's when mom comes with you? Were
Uh,
you married by the time
no,
you
she was
opened up
still
your
in
first
school.
Nations?
No, she was still in school at UK. Going to
And you had
school.
Nations already opened.
And I had no. She was going to school,
Right.
Still at UK. I was working at I had already dissolved my partnership at Village West Drugs, and I was working in a Nation's Medicines for David Nation
Oh,
right down
okay,
the
okay,
road.
okay. Got
And
it.
then he was good to me and worked with me and I told him I was going to open up my own. I wasn't going to go into partners with him. I was going to, and then he decided to, he was franchising his
Right.
business.
Nation's medicines.
Yeah,
Right.
so I
Right.
came down and I became his second franchisee, and I picked Bowling Green.
When you
And
say
so
franchisee, was the structure back then? Well, you said you opened it up. What year did you open it up?
1988.
So in '88, what's the structure? Were you sending him a percentage like I do with
Yeah.
Donato's? So
Yeah.
that was just
Yeah,
very
see,
similar.
yeah, it was 2.5% back in those
Oh,
days,
nice.
and
Yeah, I'm
that's what it
close to
stayed
10.
for. I don't know if I should say, but that's what it stayed for 20 years. A 20-year agreement. So,
I mean,
and that was fine. It was nothing. He let me operate completely the way I needed to. He just needed his 2.5%, and I think he was well. Everybody was profited well from the whole
so
situation.
you stayed in it for 20 years, and that was the end of your franchise agreement.
Right.
So at the 20-year mark is when you switched it to Sheldon's
That's
Express
when I
Pharmacy.
switched it to Sheldon's Express Pharmacy, and I think the name of the pharmacy came because I was afraid that he was going to turn around and just sell the brand again, Nation's Medicines, to somebody
Right,
else, and they wouldn't know it wasn't me.
Right.
And I had spent 20 years building
Right.
relationships. I knew that's what it took for a business relationship.
Yeah, I
So,
remember that, and I think that's business savvy for
yeah.
for
So I named it
anybody.
Sheldon's because I
Right, they
knew I
wanted to know that
wanted
it was
everybody
still
to know
you.
that
Right.
I wasn't there. I was at my own place. So.
So you do the pharmacy thing, and this is where it can get, I'm asking you to brag on yourself a little bit because I do think it's important, and quite frankly, I think selfishly this is for my kids one day and their kids, and
Yeah.
this is something that's going to be, um, it's going to live forever. I think that's the coolest thing about podcasting, and me and this conversation is going to live long past us, and that's so cool for me. So that's why I want to get to a lot. But then, so I remember just in the home or whatever, at this point, I think I come around. Obviously, I feel like I grew up in Nation's Medicines. You guys had the kids running around there all the time. I have another brother, Seth, and then me. So I was actually third in line. So, I mean, Nations had already been a thing for quite some time. You guys had been in it for, I don't know how many years, but by the time you had Seth?
Yeah, I opened it up 88, and then Seth was born in 90.
So 2 years
2
you'd already been
years.
open. So yeah, by the time I come around, because I was born in '92, yeah, you guys been open 4 or 5 years, which is very, very crazy to me to think about, which is really cool. Because I remember so much about Nations and going upstairs and playing with all the vials and seeing our picture and being a part of all those commercials and that
Yeah.
little space and
Yeah.
just feeling so a part of the community because, of Nations. And I felt like in a lot of ways I grew up there. But then ProMet comes along, and I think for me, I think one of the things that I want to talk about personally in our home is, yeah, I don't think those first 4 or 5 years you guys are making bukus of money by any means, and which sure, and what's the most remarkable thing is what I tell people all the time. Even as your story unfolds and our story as a family unfolds, and we have this home out in Barrington Manor, and I just never really felt like you guys did such a good job of like, this is just how we lived life. We never felt like we were greater than anyone. We never felt like we had tons of money. You guys just did a really good job of raising us to work hard and mind our manners and treat people with respect and show up early and dress a certain way. And those were the main points, I think, growing up that I remember. It was never about how much money, but to be fair, I mean, I wasn't born on Lehman Avenue. I know Seth was, and I was born in Barrington, on Kensington, and I watched this kind of all unfold. However, when I look back and I ask you and I ask Mom sometimes, when did you guys know? When was the first time that you had a little bit of financial freedom? After all that, right? We've heard your story. We've heard all the craziness that took you to that place. I always ask, and a lot of times you and I think Mom both say when we sold Promac was one of our biggest paydays as a family. And like I said, screw anybody that wants to watch this and think that I'm trying to promote my family. This was for my grandkids. This is for my... When you got, how did the Promac operation even happen? I know you wanted to help. Uncle Trey was working in there. Papaw was working in Promac.
Yeah.
It was a medical equipment company.
Right.
And
well, that's where
talk about it.
We I had gotten an idea that there were certain inhalation solutions that asthma patients use, and they have to use them separately. And it took 20 minutes for them to administer, 30 minutes for a parent to give their child both these medications, and they were used together a lot. Without getting too detailed, I'd come up with the idea of mixing those two medications together so that I could cut the time to administer them in half for the parents, because they had to put it in a machine and turn it on and hold it in front of their kid's mouth. So that is kind of was the idea that sparked the whole idea of let's open up I'm going to open up a company. What am I going to call it? Let me see, medical equipment company, MEC, MEC. Pro Mech. Yeah, that works. So that was probably done overnight. And so I opened up Pro Mech, and I go see a local pulmonologist who's still practicing today. And I won't, just for his privacy, I won't say his name, but I talked to him about what I wanted to do. And I could make it in my compounding lab. And long story short is I began to make these inhalation solutions, and he helped me get as far as insurance coverage and all that stuff. He was instrumental in that physician was in helping me try to figure all that out. But anyway, once we got the Medicare code to do the billing, and they understood what we were doing, and we were actually helping people, then that product became an exclusive product. And so I began the patented process, only to find out that the manufacturers had already kind of thought about it, and they expected to come out with it in 3 or 4 years. And so the way pharmacy works is I can still compound it. So I didn't know how many years I had to make it, but apparently they had already thought about it and they were working on it. So I opened up ProMech, and it specialized in these inhalation solutions, and we were kind of had the exclusive market. So other pulmonologists started seeing, and other doctors started seeing what I was doing, and anybody that was treating asthma and that kind of thing, they wanted to use the product. It helped their patients, and so it was just and so from there came adding hospital beds and walkers and
Right.
custom wheelchairs, and before you know it, a full-fledged 6 vans, 25 employees covering 40 counties. It grew really fast over a 3 or 4 year period, and at that point is the period I think you're talking about. Is we were approached by a national company that wanted the rights to be able to make that compound, and I'm not sure they did as much due diligence as they should have, but as far as understanding that the manufacturers were probably going to come out with their own version of this.
Right.
Once that happened, I figured I'd be, then anybody could get it. So anyway, we just decided to entertain. So we had 3 companies that were bidding on our company. We hired an attorney out of St. Louis that represented our company, and so without me talking to the family much, because at that point we had done well enough, and I was running the company myself, me and your mom, but we needed help. We were starting to grow so much, so we had brought Trey and Papa and Mama on, and so they were all working the business and building ProMech up. So 3 or 4 years into that, I got approached, and I kind of really kept it. I've never told the story, said it much out loud, but I wasn't trying to do anything wrong. I just knew that me talking about selling the company that they all worked at was probably not going to go over well. So I kind of worked it in the background, negotiated, just wanted to see what it would go for and whether that could change some people's lives, And so I immediately worked out once I heard some numbers, I had a family meeting over at Mama and Papa's house, and Uncle Trey was there, and we all sat down, and the first words out of my mouth were, "I'm sorry, but we're going to sell ProMech," and that was kind of a tense moment. But then the second words out of my mouth were, "These guys really want it bad, and they're willing to pay for it." And then once everybody understood that they were going to get, everybody was going to be treated very fairly in the whole situation. So that was a life-changing moment, and a lot of people don't know about that, and that's really where it gave me the ability to go out and buy the old Coca-Cola plant on the 31W and build that CVS building, and then eventually build the Bowling Green Christian Academy, and then eventually build or buy the shopping center we were in across the street at Cambridge
Right.
Square. All of that was made possible probably in those days from that transaction.
Yeah, and I think as we start trying to get into the nuts and bolts of business and entrepreneurship as a whole, if I hear you correctly, one of your biggest deals and that allowed you so much opportunity moving forward was only because your ear was to the ground, you heard about this compound, and you acted on it rather quickly. Because I'm going to lose you probably with the terminology because I'm not smart enough to truly even understand what you were even talking about 10 minutes ago.
Right.
But I do know that you were cutting edge. You stayed ahead of the curve. You were in your business. You heard something. You acted on it. And next thing you know, it's changing your life. And I think that's a big piece for it. Sounds so cliche is not the word. It sounds so simple, but it's just
Right.
so many people just stay busy that they just, they're running around like crazy, but they're not trying to get ahead of maybe what coming to market and then it's one thing to be wishful and go, okay, well, if I did this, it'd be great. It's another to execute. And that's what you did, right? You executed on the ProMac plan, and the next thing you know, it's changing your life. So when you sold ProMac, how old were you?
Gosh, I haven't thought about that one. I haven't thought about a lot of this in a long time, but I'm going to say I probably was 38.
Do you think that's
37.
do you think that was your first
Might have been a
million?
little younger
Is that
than
your
that.
first, how old were you when you made your first million? Was that it?
Probably right in there.
38,
My
39.
mid 30s probably was about when I sold it. I think I'm guessing a little too high, but yeah, that would kind of be that transaction that pushed me into that
Very cool.
to that moment.
Okay, so now you sold ProMac. You just have the one pharmacy, as everyone knows that we talked about in your intro. You've got over 9 now, and there's a lot. We'll try to
Building
get
one
through
more
this.
this year.
Yeah, and doing another
Yeah,
this year, so
yeah.
you'll have 10. A lot to unpack between now and then, but one of the things that I wanted. So is that when you start? So you started talking about real estate a minute ago. So you
Mm-hmm.
had the money to do it. So then that's when you started kind of dabbling into you said Coca-Cola plant and real estate, which you're very heavily involved still in real estate to this day. I mean, you've liquidated a lot, but through my
Right.
years of 33 years of living in your
Right.
household, I'm not living at home anymore,
Right.
thank God. But I've watched so many real estate deals come and go, and one of my favorite real estate deals that you've ever did was obviously the CVS right there on the bypass and how that whole thing. And I'm still every time I hear it, I learn something new about negotiating and real estate in general. If you feel comfortable, can you talk about the CVS deal and the land and the building and that whole deal and how it went down? Because it was the most intriguing thing. And talk about earlier, I'll go back to you being in the library and having a library job, or you talking about how you weren't the best student in high school. My dad is extremely smart. And I say that in a sense of if he doesn't know something, it just bothers him. And he's just going to go figure it out, whether he uses it down the road or whether he doesn't. He's one of those guys that's just kind of very hyper competitive with himself, in that if he doesn't know it, he just wants to know so bad. And so he's going to go figure it out. And so when it comes to a lot of his business brain, his business mind, he's just made so many crazy, cool, fun, intellectual moves that my brain doesn't even do, but this is one of them. So if you're okay with it, can you talk about the real estate deal with CVS and buying the land and how you bought it back, whatever?
Yeah, it was kind of it's when you see a good idea but you don't have the financial backing, or you're not big enough to pull the idea off. The idea seems bigger than what I can pull off. I just had to get as creative as I could. And so I had somebody call me, a friend of mine who's still doing business here in town, auctioneer, and said, Steve, this old Coca-Cola plant down here on the corner, and you've been telling me to look for a corner lot, uh, uh, is going to go up for sale. I want to think it was $600,000. And I said, oh my gosh, there's no way in the world I'll ever come up with that kind of money. But he goes, we can tie it up, and so he said, if you want a shot at it. Of course, my first thought was that would make a great location, because those were the days when the old drugstores, CVS, Revco, Rite Aids, all of them, they were in shopping centers. They weren't on the corners, freestanding buildings. So that was during the transition phase when they were all looking for corner spots. And I had a CVS right down the road from my drugstore that was in the shopping center there at there were Crossland churches now that they were in that shopping center. And so I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. If I can go to CVS, then they called themselves Revco, but to make it easy, we'll just call them CVS. So I said, if I go to CVS and I can get them interested in that corner lot, then I can approach them as a real estate developer and, not necessarily share that I'm in the pharmacy business. And it's a block down the road from my pharmacy, so it wasn't like I was trying to hurt anybody else with it. But I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I get hold of the district manager of CVS. They show some interest. And the minute they started showing interest, I immediately called the auctioneer back. I said, what can we do to hold that property until I can negotiate a lease? He said, well, you got to give $5,000 a month. I'll never forget it. I didn't have $5,000. I might have been able to pull the $5,000 off, and I'm sure that was before I even closed the Promec deal. So because I remember thinking, well, do I lose that $5,000? They go, yeah. You get to hold it for 30 days for $5,000. Then 30 more days for another $5,000, then 30 more days. I had three $5,000 options. And every $5,000 I put up was gone to the wind if I didn't make something happen. And I knew I couldn't do it unless I got CVS to commit to that lot. So the way this all worked is I knew I didn't have the money, but they didn't know I didn't have the money. So it was kind of like I went to them with this great idea. And I said, why don't you all just we're going to do a buy sell back. Why don't you all get the land and we'll put an agreement together that says that you have to build your building on this land. And at the end of the day, I'll buy it back. I'm going to sell it to you, but with an agreement in hand that you have to immediately sell it to me the minute you move in for this price. And they had to do that because I had control of the land. Now, if they'd have waited 90 days, I didn't have any more $5,000 options, and it was over. So on the 80th day, they call me and Revco says we've sold out to CVS. I went, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to be introduced to a whole new guy. I just think, okay, there goes my $15,000 that I've, because I've been working, and the whole time I'm working in the drugstores anyway. At the end of the day, like on the 5 days before the 90 days was up, they agreed to what we call a buy sell back agreement. I don't know if anybody's ever done one. I've never even heard of one since I did one, but I'm sure but anyway, the buy sell back agreement worked perfectly. I didn't have to get involved with the construction. I didn't have to go down there and make sure it was done the way they wanted it. They built the whole thing exactly the way they wanted it. And when they were done, I bought it for what land was $600 and whatever it cost them to build it, and I got it right back. And then they started paying me a monthly lease. I want to think back in those days, it was like $15,000 a month or something. But and I had a 20-year lease. Right. So then. And then, a funny story is CVS, who bought out Revco, they found out I was a pharmacist too after the deal was over, after we'd done the deal. So they didn't necessarily like doing business that their landlord was one of their competitors down the street. But that's kind of a funny story. And several years later, I sold.
They kept the building, but you had the land, right?
No. I kept I had the building and the land. Yeah.
When you sold that piece of property in the building, did it go to CVS? Did they buy
no
it back?
No, somebody from Wisconsin called me and wanted it twice as much as I did.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
so it went from CVS to you to someone up in
Wisconsin. It was 3 or 4 years later.
20-year lease is already
3 or 4 years later, 20-year lease is worth a lot of money to somebody.
Well, yeah, of course.
And
yeah.
so,
I thought it would be even funnier if the story ended with CVS buying it back from me. So
well, they could have from this other guy, but no, somebody from
so
Wisconsin called me and said,
hey, so you built the strip center behind there too, like
the condos behind
condos behind there.
Yeah.
Was that part of the purchase?
No.
The Wisconsin
well,
guy?
Actually, it was part of the whole land purchase was $600,000, and that included the land that the condos are on and the land O'Reilly's Auto is on.
Right.
And so but I just did the deal with CVS and carved out just the corner acre, and I still owned the land that wasn't involved. So when I got done with the CVS deal, I still had the land behind it and still had the O'Reilly's land. So I turned around and developed those buildings and built those buildings. We didn't even talk
about O'Reilly's. Didn't you own the O'Reilly's at one point?
Mm-hmm.
So crazy.
I built it and had that lease. long-term lease as well. Eventually sold that lease to somebody in town that you all know very well. Yeah, yeah.
You know what's crazy about all this? If you're from Bowling Green, you know this already. Probably, I don't know. That sounds really conceited to say, but my house where I live right now is I can walk out on my porch and dang near pee on the CVS building. I mean, I'm literally like, this is how small of a town kind of Bowling Green is. And I guess if you get down to its nuts and bolts, but like some of my dad's first business deals, I'm literally staring at O'Reilly's Auto Parts. This CVS when I walk out of my backyard, which is so ironic and so cool. But okay, so you do the O'Reillys, you sell that off, whatever. I work my way into Batteries Plus now. I kind of know how that came to fruition because you found margin in batteries, I guess, and so you did the website first. Is that what did the website come first before Batteries Plus or Batteries Plus?
No, Batteries Plus came first.
And so you were just looking to diversify at this point.
Yeah.
You had a good spot, I think, because I don't think did you ever own the building that Batteries Plus is in right now on the
yes,
bypass?
yes. I bought it was a Kentucky Fried Chicken building, and I bought it, and it had so much grease in it I had to knock it down, and we built that building there for Batteries Plus on the bypass. I owned the land and the building and the business.
Got it.
And had a couple of guys that I'd hired.
So why'd you choose
that.
batteries? Because was it the margin? I mean, I know everyone had to have one of the things you've
I
always
wish I had
told us. Well, one of the things you've always told us,
Yeah.
and maybe help your train of thought, maybe not. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
One
I
of the
know why I
things you
did.
always told us in business was if you're going to go into business with things people have to have, right?
Right.
And so if you look at all of us brothers and what we've kind of done is obviously you knew that people had to have drugs, okay?
Right.
And so you did the pharmacy thing, and then obviously I think I was the second to open up any type of business, but people have to have food, right? And you were just saying, listen, and then pizza's everywhere, and it's good margin, and the fact that there's 15 pizza shops in Bowling Green shouldn't scare you. It should tell you that a lot of people eat pizza. You just got to do it better than them, and you would always tell me that. Batteries Plus, is it because everyone had to have batteries? I mean, how simple, or was it? I mean, what was it?
Well, I had learned the lesson of not diversifying early in my career when I had that spoiled partnership. I really only had that to hang my hat on, and so I began to start wanting to diversify. So there was real estate, obviously, some of the transactions we've talked about, but I really felt like I had. I'll never forget it. It was one individual in particular who was a pharmacist that worked over at the med center that told me that I just got lucky and I opened up my pharmacy at the right place in the right time. Maybe it was a little prideful. I don't know what it was, but I'll never forget thinking, well, I guarantee you I can run any business as long as I have relationships and I care about people and I do it better than everybody else to a point where I care about my people more than
Correct.
People typically aren't as sincere. At least there's a lot these days that are doing very good with that thought process. But in my day, I felt like I was certainly there to serve the people. And so I just, I thought, okay, I'm going to diversify into something I know absolutely nothing about. I'm going to show them that relationships can make any business as crazy as that. And I'll never forget, I went to Barnes & Noble. I sat down in their magazine section. I had no idea what I was going to open up, but I knew I was going to open up something. And there's a franchise magazine there. I pick it up. I sit down in Barnes & Noble for about 3 hours, thumbing through Barnes & Noble. And I run into this Batteries Plus franchise. I said, that's it. Because there's laptops and there's phones and there's all this stuff that and everything's going portable in those days.
And for everybody listening, Dad has not been in a Barnes and Noble since. I promise you that. All right,
well,
going.
I couldn't afford to buy the magazine, so a lot of that was you go in there and you sit down there and read free magazine, but it was good.
Anyway, so you saw it was like
saw
top.
it there.
What was it? A magazine of like the top 100 franchises or something?
Yeah. It was a top
and you
franchise.
saw probably the cost, I guess, barrier to entry is what people call it. I guess the terminology. It wasn't a ton of money to open up, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily that bad. I think franchise fees were like 20,000 or something, and the term of the lease was 15, and it was a lot. It was very reasonable. I just thought there's not a battery place in town that specifies on batteries, and I started thinking of forklift batteries and
Right.
airplane batteries and military base batteries. And so then anyway, I just, that sparked me to get out and open them up. And of
So you
course,
had the one, and then it turns into how many? 3, 4?
I think we had 4 at the time. I ended up selling it to one of the greatest guys in town.
Well, yeah, we love David
yeah,
Pascal. I'll
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
him all day, but I do kind of know how this venture ends up, and I
Yeah.
do want to talk about that. I think it's important. I remember. So you had the one, and then the other 3 were where you said, didn't you have one in
Clarksville?
Clarksville,
Clarksville,
right
right next to the military base.
And then you have one in Goodlettsville,
In Hendersonville,
Hendersonville.
Goodlettsville.
Yeah. I remember. I remember going. It's funny. I had to pass there.
Yeah,
My wife's
yeah.
from Hendersonville now,
Yeah.
so I have to pass where Dad's Batteries Plus was, which is so crazy to me.
What was cool about that store is, like, we have stories of Alan Jackson and Reba McEntire coming in and getting batteries for their,
right,
their
is
stuff.
so cool.
Yeah.
So that, I know that business deal. I remember growing up, and this is just your dad being your hero, and people always saying or telling you that everything your dad touches turns to gold. I remember genuinely hearing that from so many
wish
people.
that were true.
But Batteries Plus, right? It was one of those business deals that you didn't make money on, correct?
Right. Yeah. No,
Right,
I didn't.
so you did. You lost money on that deal, and I mean, if you had to pinpoint,
Well, I don't know that I lost a ton, but
well, I mean, it was still a loss. I guess.
just don't want to take it away.
What did you learn? I guess from the Batteries
Yeah.
Plus deal and going through that, and it not ended up like a Promec or a Nation/Sheldon's Express Pharmacy, which is obviously
Well, I
real estate.
wanted to prove relationships.
Right,
with
and
sell
you did
products,
that,
and I think we did that. But here's the kick on that. I wasn't expecting. I probably should have. Is that the relationships that were formed were in the trenches, and it always is, no matter what business you're in. The relationship that really holds on is the one that you get when you're in the trenches with the customer yourself. And so the whole time I was trying to, in my mind, prove that relationships can sell a good product if you hustle. David Pascal proved that to me.
Right.
It was his relationships with the people. So once, it didn't take me long to figure out, 3 or 4 years in, I looked at David and I said, it's you that's driving this train.
100%.
It's you. So we just kind of figured out what it was. And then David rented the building from me and bought the business. And I was just really, it was a great experience.
Yeah, I think too. I think that's probably how you've been able to grow. Going through that, maybe, I don't know. I may be putting words in your mouth, but going through that season, I think you figured out a better way to grow with Sheldon's, because I've heard you say this over and over. Your kind of growth model. It's looked different than mine, and obviously, we have 2 locations now. I had 4 at one point, and haven't really necessarily found that secret sauce. But I think for you, you've always said that I would try to go into smaller towns and find the David Pascal. You always use David Pascal's name.
Right.
Find the David Pascal of Portland, Tennessee. Find the Steve Sheldon of what is it? I mean, Rockport, Indiana, or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's just been your growth model.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is to find that guy in
it's-
smaller towns,
Yeah.
and then let him that built those relationships,
Absolutely.
that were in the trenches, and that's kind of been your growth model. And I have to check myself, quite frankly, because what we did when we grew was we just took people from Bowling Green and we put them in Murfreesboro,
Right.
and we put them in Nashville.
Yeah.
That didn't necessarily have the relationships. In
Right.
Nashville, it's like, whoa, Spence, how are you supposed to find that person in Nashville? Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm out of that market. But Murfreesboro, right, we took people from Bowling Green that didn't have the relationships and the growth model. I'm not saying you can't grow in other ways, but that's been your model. And I do want to go back to one more thing, which is the relationship piece, right? I think it's incredible how many people still can't get this right. Like I truly think it's remarkable. I think when it comes to relationships with your consumer, people do business with people. They don't do business with a product, right?
Exactly.
We've heard this 100 times. And even your success, you would you would say a lot of it is because of the relationships you have with people and how much you cared about your customer.
That's right.
Your customer.
That's right.
It's honestly, at the end of the day, it's actually that simple. I would go out on a limb. Yes, are there some intangible things that you must know about business? And we've talked about it on this podcast a lot with me and all the things that I struggled with financially, looking at the numbers, because I'm not a good numbers guy and math was never my thing. However, the number one thing that can drive any business, whether it's batteries, drugs, real estate, is the relationship piece and how much you care about the customer, the customer, the customer, the customer, the customer. And it's so crazy how we get distracted so much in business to where we just forget about them. And then you throwing your hands up going, why is my business not working? What's going on, Spence? Or what's going on, Steve?
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, have you talked to your consumer lately? What are
Right.
they saying? They're going to tell you
Right.
why it's going downhill. Have you gone out there and talked to them? Are you giving yourself access to them?
Right.
Does your GM or AGM or does your manager see that the same way? Or are they just coming at you bitching and complaining about the margins are shrinking, my staff sucks? Or are they actually going, well, are you getting down the trenches with your consumer? And I think, to hear you talk, and obviously how I was raised and how I've had some sort of success is literally just customer driven. Just consumer driven.
It really is. It's not rocket science, and the more simplified you make it, the better chance you have to be a success.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I kept it very simple. I'll never forget. Somebody approached me about people ask me all the time, well, why did you open up a pharmacy in Portland, Tennessee, for instance? I said, well, because I found the homecoming king of the high school there decided to be a pharmacist, and he's working at the CVS down the road. That's why I went to Portland. I'd never been to Portland. But when I found that guy and we had supper together one night, I knew I was going to build a store around that guy.
Right.
And so I built that store, and a great, another transaction that probably you haven't heard a lot about was when I built that store up, and in about 5-6 years, we put the Walgreens and CVS pretty much at bay there, and they had to come and compete to buy me out, and that ended up being a nice transaction.
So one of the stories that I love, speaking of Portland, Tennessee, was when you had to go get where I'm going with this. You had to go get your pharmacy degree or license in Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the craziest stories
that.
about my dad. And when I go speak, I'm actually speaking in a classroom tonight, and I try to give people just a small tidbit of my upbringing. And the one story that I always tell everyone about my dad, as it pertains to just grit and just who he is to his core, and all this misconception about how hardcore I guess maybe my dad feels and can be, or how cut and dry, just kind of no really gray with my dad when it comes to like walking into his office about business. I mean, it's just kind of, this is the way he did it, this is the way it's kind of gonna, whatever. I mean, all the misconceptions, and I'm going, well, this is the same guy that, and you can kind of tell the story, but my dad goes in to take his pharmacy. I mean, he's
Tennessee law exam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how many years removed have you been from a classroom at this point?
Gosh, at that point, probably 20 years.
Yeah, 20 some years. So he didn't decide to put a pharmacy in Tennessee, and so obviously his license to practice didn't carry over into Tennessee. So he had to go take his law portion of the exam. He had to go study. I remember seeing you laying in bed, studying for this law portion of this exam. Dad goes to Tennessee, and you can tell the story from there.
Yeah, I go to Tennessee and to get a license. I couldn't own the pharmacy in Tennessee unless I had a Tennessee active license. So I go down there. It's a big state building with great big doors. I'll never forget it. And they were automatic doors, and they're big, heavy silver doors. I'll never forget it. And there was a lady in a wheelchair right in front of me. And so I jumped around in front of her, and it was a double door. You go through one door, then through another one. But they were both these, I didn't know it at the time, they were automatic doors. They would have opened up for the lady, but I didn't know that. So I run up there, and I go to push both doors open in the middle there to try to get this lady through with a wheelchair. And that activation on those big heavy doors kicked in, and they opened up themselves. Well, the problem with that is when they opened up themselves, my wedding ring got caught on the door, and it pulled my finger almost completely off. Yeah, and blood started going everywhere, and I'm just standing there in the lobby of this government building, and everybody's kind of freaking out. Those were the days that old brown paper napkins were in the restroom. So I look down and I see how bad it is, but I also see that my wedding ring was serving as a tourniquet. It was swelling up so fast that the wedding ring was cut off the blood from flowing, and my finger was kind of hanging. So I just went into the restroom and got some of those brown paper napkins. I'll never forget it, because I couldn't come back and take this exam any other time. I had arranged to get it, and I had this deal going down for the pharmacy in Portland. So I wrapped up my hand real good in that brown paper, and I walked into there and took a 2-hour exam, laid my hand on my lap. I'll never forget the people on either side of me slowly watched that paper turn red. And they didn't know what had happened, but I had it laying in my lap, and I took the exam, went home, and a buddy of mine over at the ER, Dr. Greg Nix, he's gosh, super guy. He gets a saw out and cuts my wedding ring off my finger and sews my finger back on. I still got some pretty nasty scars, but that's pretty
Yeah, he
crazy
passes it.
story.
He's holding his finger together and passes his Tennessee licensing exam
Yeah.
to do another business deal because he knew, or he wasn't going down without a fight, and that's just who my dad's always been. And
You
it's
could only
just,
take it every 2 or 3 months, so you kind of had to
yeah,
do
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's crazy too. Yeah, exactly. He was under a time crunch, and he knew that the deal probably wouldn't go through if he didn't take it, and he did it holding his finger in his hand. And where we pick up on the story as his kids was we just saw after they had sewn his finger back on, and you guys, the staples went completely like we thought he was exaggerating, right? No, there's no way your finger was off, or whatever, or hanging on by a thread, whatever we thought. But then when we saw the stitches went all the way completely around his finger, and that he had no, I mean, I don't know if you have feeling in that or not.
Oh, yeah.
I just know you have that big
Yeah.
old scar. But anyways, long
Yeah.
story short, I tell that story about my dad all the time because his upbringing speaks for itself, but I don't necessarily have time to go through all that with people. But if I can give them one story of what I witnessed with my father, it was probably that one. And countless of others. I mean, just growing up in sports and watching, not hard, but just he never let us get by with much. If we had a bad game, it was a bad game, and we were going to go correct it. And that was just but that's just who my dad is in the best unbelievable way possible. I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere I am today without that version of my father. So for me, it's such a blessing. But that story is absolutely nuts. And so one thing we haven't touched on is two things really. Number one is, and you can make this short and sweet because there's really not much to this other than
Right.
Houchins Industries is one of the biggest ESOPs, if not the biggest in the world, and they're based right here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where we filmed this. When did you sell to Houchins? And then how many stores did you have at that point when you sold to Houchins?
I believe we had 3 in the process of. We were in the process of purchasing a store in Franklin. We had the Buckhead store open. We had the Fairview store open, and we were looking at a 4th when we kind of got our heads together. They had some pharmacies that they had acquired in a grocery store acquisition, and they needed help with those stores.
Right, so it made
and
sense.
so it kind of made sense for them to kind of talk with me and say, hey, what do you think we ought to do with these pharmacies down here we bought? And by the way, if you just want to come on board, let's do a partnership or some kind of deal to where you can help us, we can help you. And I was about 50, a little over 50 at the time, and it appealed to me to have a partner at this point that was going to allow me to continue to operate my businesses the way I do. And so, yeah, they've been a blessing and a great partner.
Well, I think one of the things that you did, which has stuck with me, even when I think about, maybe selling or whatever, getting out in any
Right.
capacity, or exiting in any capacity, anything that I'm doing. One of the things that I remember you saying was one of your biggest driving forces was selling it was your employees,
Absolutely.
was having a
Absolutely.
retirement.
Right.
Them being that it was an ESOP, you felt like long term it was going to benefit them just as much as it was
yeah.
you.
Yeah, I had
And I've always respected that.
Yeah, I had been through probably my last 7 or 8 years that I was growing my company. I was getting a lot of inquiries from a lot of the pharmacists and the professionals that were working for me about a retirement plan and about benefits. And I could see quickly I couldn't compete in the market with the bigger chains on benefits and retirement and still be able to make the profit because the reimbursements were going down to some extent. And it was huge. Matter of fact, it was the number one reason why I feel like that we made the decision, and there's still a lot of my employees that are with me that were with me the day we did it. So
Right.
they're still here.
So so I think at one point it was like 15, 16, right? There was 15, 16 pharmacies that when they brought in, and then
I think
when
they
you
brought in,
merged,
yeah, I think
and then
they,
you shut down like 5 or 6 of them because you kind of knew that, hey, this
yeah,
wasn't really the model that needed to
I
happen.
think they brought in 8 or 9, and we shut down about 5 or 6,
Right,
and
and
then
now you have
and then
9, about to be 10.
and then we converted everything over to the Sheldon brand, and then
Right.
we went to Rockport and to Mount Carmel and to Jasper and
Now, is this a
Rockport,
myth? While I'm thinking about it, were you one of the first, if not the first? I don't know. I could be wrong. This is hysterical. I'm asking you this live. Were you one of the first ever to put a drive-through in a pharmacy?
Actually, in 1989, 1990, I put the first drive-through window, and I'm not going to say the very first because I want to think that there was kind of like I call it a liquor store type window, a hole in the wall kind of thing in one of the small pharmacies in town. But I had seen in Florida where people were experimenting with drive-throughs. So yeah, I was probably I don't know of anybody else in Kentucky that actually had one, or as far as I
Right.
could see, I saw it in a magazine where somebody in Florida had tried it. Didn't work out so well, but I could see the potential in it. So I kind of went out and upgraded the whole drive-through experience, bought a bank window, and developed. That's kind of where I developed the whole self-payment system from the pay pill and all that.
Which is remarkable to me because I mean Chick-fil-A was kind of a thing, but Chick-fil-A was like in malls when we were growing up, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have the drive-through thing either, but I'll be honest with you, I think what's made them so successful is the elevated drive-through experience. And I feel like you were at the top of your game in that season too, and that's how Chick-fil-A is making their money, one of the most prolific, profitable freaking companies there is because of the drive-through experience. And there's so many just correlations in my upbringing and some of the most what's the word, successful companies in the world and the way my dad did business. And it's just remarkable that I had that upbringing. That's another reason why.
Well, I think your generation has taken it now to another whole level with the internet, DoorDash, with delivery services.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's honestly nuts. I mean, it's
I
like
lived through
so
the drive-through period, but you all are going to live
right.
through.
Well, there was still that one-on-one stuff, and relationships still matter, whether it's through a screen or whether it's through. I mean, that how you portray yourself on your social media, and if it is raw, real, and vulnerable, you can still have these relationships, quite frankly, with people that don't even know you.
Right.
But if you're a facade and you're someone that you're not, I mean, they'll eventually see right through it. But the beauty, I guess, about our generation is we have access to so many more people, and if you do it right, I think there's a lot of money to be made. However, it's such a competitive market because anyone can download a TikTok, anyone can download this, to where the barrier to entry. You to get to your point, and you really had to want it, right? There's just so much hoopla out there, I think, with all the social medias and how easy it is for someone to get on there and say they're selling a belt. And honestly, there's so many daggum scams out there too. So I think you just got to be honest. So pharmacies, we'll just kind of land the plane on that. That's obviously been your bread and butter your entire life. You're still actively doing that and running all 10 of these. My little sister's a pharmacist. My oldest brother's a pharmacist. His wife's a pharmacist. We have family running in and out of. My mom obviously is a pharmacist, but she's a mom first and foremost and the best. And we're gonna get her on here, so I don't have to talk too much to her to her other than she's obviously the glue that keeps this whole thing going. But let's talk about politics. We'll kind of land the plane here. I think I mentioned 2019. Yeah, 2019. You run.
I did 4 years.
You run. Yeah, you run for
like
state rep.
Prison term.
Why? I guess why, and and how did that go, or what's some of the cool things that you did, and I guess who talked you into doing that first? Was it you? I remember Houghton's coming to you about potentially lobbying for them.
Well, that kind of was in reverse. The CEO and the president of Houghton's then were very active politically. Encouraged me along with a few others to run for state office, and I honestly felt like that until you do it, until you're there and I felt like it was another way to serve. And that goes back to my military days, and because I always knew that I was going to serve back to the government. Somehow civil service was going to give back for what they did for me with the War Orphan Scholarship and that kind of thing. So I always felt like I needed to go back and pay that debt back. And at the same time, I get to serve our community. So it was kind of a good thing. I felt like it was a good match. I went and we ran a couple of elections and did okay, and I enjoyed my time there. But it kind of ran its course with me, our family, things that were developing in our lives. Uh, it was time for me to come back home. But I really, really enjoyed the what I was able to do when I was there. Got involved with a number of bills that some of it was military related,
Yeah,
some of
which
it.
one are you most proud of?
Uh, I don't know. Pride is,
Proud of.
yeah. Uh, there was about 12 or 13. I don't know which one exactly. I
Which one did you
probably,
work the hardest on? How about that?
I tell you what, the one I worked the hardest on was certainly the pharmacy benefits manager uh, uh, in industry is something very few people know anything about, but they're very unregulated. So I worked hard with a number of pharmacists. It makes sense because we have lawyers up there that are state reps. They work on the law statute. Healthcare providers will tend to work on healthcare issues. So I worked on like for physician assistants. I was able to give them the ability to write for prescriptions that they didn't normally write for. Uh, I reorganized the state board of education, so that was dealing with a lot of the teachers and the superintendents during all that. Uh, you know, a number military veterans. I was able to provide some things for them through a little bill that I started out with. Odd and end things, but probably more proud that we were able to make a change in the industry that I knew most about to the positive that helped a lot of mom and pop businesses and the communities that they existed in survive and not have to close down, even though it's still very difficult these days to compete.
Right, and yeah, I remember all that, and obviously, my perspective on your time in politics was a couple things. One was I remember having an A-frame in my restaurant one time, and I think Nick, you may have been you were probably in the restaurants when Dad was in politics, and we had an A-frame one time, and obviously you're my dad, and so all of our businesses here in town we had support Steve Sheldon, state representative or whatever. But we had a picture of Dad, yada yada yada, and I'm sitting there talking to a table, and this gentleman comes up to me and he says, it's probably not a good idea to pick
Yeah,
sides
take a
and
stand.
take
Yeah,
a stance in
in business.
politics.
Yeah,
Inside your business, and I just don't think that I'll be back because of it. And I looked at him, as dead serious as I possibly could. I said, "Sir, that's my dad." And he goes, "Oh." And and I respected the fact that he kind of took back his
sure.
stance. However, we had so many of those moments where people thought we were crazy for jumping into politics because we did have so many businesses, and politics has become so divided, which is so much crap,
Yeah,
that it did feel like. And I remember you calling us and you being so insecure, is not the word about it, but worried about how this was going to affect our businesses, and you
right,
calling me, going, "Spence, how's your business doing ever since I started, if this starts affecting you guys and how your business is, I'll pull out tomorrow, I'll quit this, and we'll
right,
find somebody else."
right.
And obviously it was extremely admirable of you to say, but you were our guy, and we weren't anywhere in business or in life without you. And, when you took on this thing, we were going to support you regardless, and we were super proud of you and how all that came out. And it's not easy being a politician because you are just basically putting yourself up to be a big old punching bag. I tell people all the time, my dad was Superman, but all we saw or felt like when my dad was in politics was just people trying to take his cape from him all the
Right,
time.
right.
And, we could create this version of our dad, in which we did fairly well for a certain amount of years of our life. Never once did he put himself up for letting someone else control the narrative of how we felt about our dad, and that's what politics does. And I think that was the hardest part for all of us when my little sister's calling me crying, going, "You won't believe what so and so said under his post."
Yeah,
Or when my brothers would get on there and go back and forth with these people, and I'm going, "That's really not our personality to be combative. You have your stance, I'll have mine." However, there is such thing as common sense, and we would like, and we were just supporting our dad,
Right.
and it was a crazy, crazy season, but nothing that we as a family didn't get through, and we weren't extremely proud of that season, regardless of how you felt like it ended up. All of our businesses are still open. I think you enjoyed that experience as much as anything in your life. Would you ever get back into it?
Uh, I think I have I think if I did, it would be after I retired from the pharmacy
Right.
world and had a little more time and effort, but probably not. But I would never rule it out because you never know where the good Lord's going to lead you down the road. But I really love the pharmacy business, what we've done, and the amount of people that we're able to serve. We're filling 1 million prescriptions a year now, and we could touch so many lives, and I feel like that I've got a good relationship with Frankfurt and all the current state representatives, and we can be heard when we feel like we need to be. And I met with one just 3 days ago about an issue. So and on behalf of Bowling Green, the issue I met with him about didn't have anything to do with pharmacy, so yeah, I feel like it was a great experience. It was a nice step in the door. Uh, Going back, it would have to be in some type of larger capacity where I could have more of an effect, where I could serve more people, and that would have to take me retiring.
How do you? You're 60 some years old. I got two more questions,
Hmm.
and then we're done. How do you want to finish? I mean,
Yeah.
what's like? I mean, well, you've been incredible for us, and just feel like it's been so fun having you as a dad, and I think you've accomplished so much. And some days we're just like, chill out,
Yeah.
What do you want for yourself? I guess the last, let's just say, what's the average?
Yeah.
Um,
10 years or whatever.
yeah, the
Yeah.
average
Yeah.
the date or whatever people are living nowadays. Let's say you get to 80. I mean, what do you want for yourself the next 20
Sure.
years, right?
Sure. I would love to be able to answer that the way I know you want me to answer it, but I think uh, I, I don't see myself as not serving in some capacity until the day I die.
Right.
And which means probably retirement's out of the question, what I end up doing. But don't think that I don't, yeah, there's been a number of times I've questioned myself and said, why can't I just sit down and be purpose driven and be content with, playing around the golf, sitting with my buddies and talking, playing chess, hanging out, with the grandkids. Why can't I just be content
Well,
with
don't
that?
don't
And
play
I
chess
haven't
with your
gotten
buddy.
there.
If you're playing chess with your buddies at 60, then you got the wrong friends.
Well, chess is something
Just
that
kidding.
I relate
I
to,
know.
but no, I, I don't see me ever stopping. I see me continuing to serve, and I'd like to continue on with the Sheldon Pharmacy for as long as the good Lord allows me, and things continue to do well in the industry. But I feel like I have as much energy today as I ever have ever, and I think me retiring would be a huge mistake for me. I just don't. I think we all have to have a purpose in life, and it can't just be socially driven. I think there has to be something that's creating a challenge for you, at least for me. Something that's creating a challenge that's causing me to get up every day and go after it. And I think that's been good for me, and that's kept me
Yeah, I
on
think it
task.
keeps your ticker ticking.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's 100%. We all know that. So I guess lastly, it's like well, two things. One's funny, but the other one, the last one, last serious thing I'll ask you is, what do you want? I don't necessarily like this word, but what do you want your legacy like when you pass? Like, what do you want people to say about Steve Sheldon?
Wow. That he gave more than he took. I think that to me, that's really that's really all. I used to laugh the guys in Frankfurt when they heard that I was going to retire as a state representative. Uh, they came to me and said, why are you doing this? The speaker and friends that I had, and I told them, I said, well, I was afraid they were going to put state representative on my epitaph on my stone.
That's funny.
I said so I don't want to go out people thinking of me as a politician. That's for sure. I think there's so much division there. But I I would like to go out and people look back and go, he gave so much more than he took, and at the end of the day, he died with a nickel in the bank, and everybody around him, uh, he did the best he could by him.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah, and I think you do a good job without getting sentimental again. But you've obviously done that for our family and so many people that I can give countless of stories that you've helped out in Bowling Green that I either run into that they tell me about a time where you helped them out, or there's so many that still to this day I have a relationship because you helped them out.
Right.
Yeah, I can give countless of those stories, and so. Bowling Green thanks you, obviously, on behalf of, Seth, Seaton, Tara. I know my mom. We're just so thankful for the servant leadership, not only that you've done the last, gosh, I'm 33, so 33 years that I've seen. And then in our family, but from a business perspective, we've all worked for you too. And I would say on the behalf of, and I feel like I owe it to you to say this, but your employees for 35 straight years, on how many countless employees that have walked in and out of your battery business, your real estate deals, your pharmacies, inside my pizza restaurant when you were busting tables and getting me started and helping Seaton and being a part of Tara's life. And we're just business. And, your employees, they do, some of it ended squirrely, some of it ended well, but they all thank you. And I think you needed to hear that. Last thing I'll say, and I got this from Logan Crosby. Shout out to you, because this has been a hit in these podcasts that we're producing down in Nashville. But he asked everyone a question, and I think it's really good. And it pertains to you because you've been in real estate. But if you had one strip mall and you had 5 tenants, and it's the only place you can go to the rest of your life, and you got 5 stores, what 5 stores are you putting in that strip mall?
Okay. In today's world?
Your world.
In
like
my
you
world?
can only go to 5 places.
Okay. I can only go to 5
Yeah,
places?
this is your
All
strip
right.
mall, and
This
you
is
can
my
put
strip.
5.
And
you
I
can
can
put
only
5
go to those.
businesses in it, and these are the 5 that you got to go to the rest of your life.
All right. Well, I want to eat well, so I'm going to put a Donato's,
Okay,
and then
smart.
I want to stay in shape, so I'm going to put a Rock Box.
Oh, see,
Wouldn't help.
I should have known where this is going. Okay, this is such a good
And then
answer.
I need to recover after I go to Rock Box,
Yeah,
so I'm going to put Sweat.
Yeah, you need drugs,
Studio,
I'm sure.
and then definitely need to have medicine every now and then. So there's a drugstore. The last one, probably FHG clothing
Get
store.
you some clothes. Gosh dang it! That was a layup. I was expecting something different. You answered that extremely well, But well, Dad, first off, thank you for your time. I'm so appreciative for you. Everyone is so appreciative for you. Today's been so fun. Like I said, my biggest prayer for something like this is, and Nick obviously taking 2 hours of your day. Yeah, this is something that's going to live out. This is going to outlive us,
Yeah.
and I think that's
Yeah.
the coolest part about taking the time out today and recording this conversation, because people are going to hear Spence at 33, they're going to hear you at 60, and it's a conversation, and they're going to probably know more about me or my great-great-grandkids, and your great-great-grandkids long after we're gone is going to get to hear this audible.
Well, I can see why. It's a very difficult thing. I think most people have control of their humility. The more success they have, I think that leads to more success. And doing a podcast and opening up like this is very difficult for a lot. And I know a lot of people in our community have similar stories to mine. And it's hard to open up, but at the same time, you do want your children, your grandchildren, your community to know that you're all in. You're all in.
No, we're so thankful for you being here. You guys subscribe, like. This one's been so fun. I'm sure Dad will come back at some point. But this was this was good. This was really good. We love you. Like, subscribe, do all the things. Just Spence podcast. This is my dad, Steve Sheldon. You can find him at Steve Sheldon on Facebook, on Instagram. Give him a shout. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you hanging for about two freaking hours.